We're talking about retail supplier updates today, and who is leading? That's our wonderful Stacy Tan. She's the VP of Retail Insights. Stacy is a decade of experience being a supplier, and she works with all of our teams here at Supply Pike to make sure that we are serving up the best experience and products to our partners. All right, and then my name is Allie Trong. You guys have probably seen me before on webinars. I'm the lead content coordinator, and we'll go ahead and get into the agenda on the next slide. All right, so what are we talking about today? We've got a packed agenda. We're going to start with the retail supply chain trends at a high level, what's going on in the industry, and then we're going to dig down into Walmart updates. You'll notice that Walmart takes up a large portion of today's webinar because there are just so many updates that have happened in the last couple of months. And then we'll dive into all retailers. So when we say all retailers here at Supply Pike, we're talking about Walmart, Target, Kroger, and Amazon. And there have been a lot of changes in the compliance space, so we'll get into that. And then the next session will be on freight changes. So we'll see a lot of compliance changes at all retailers. So in turn, there'll be freight changes. Then we'll have time for some general questions and discussion with Stacy. And then you can stick around for a bonus product preview of the Deductions Navigator product, which will be exciting. All right, and then some general FAQs that we get on our webinars. Will you get a copy of today's slide deck? Yes, we will actually send you a recording of today's webinar so you can follow along or share with your teams. And you'll also get a copy of the slide deck. And we get those out around in 3 to 4 business days. We'll send that to your email. If you can't find it in your email, we're happy to send it to you, but you can also find it on Supplier Wiki website. The second FAQ that we get often is, what is the best way to ask a question? So you'll see in your little Zoom bar down below, there's a Q&A tab on Zoom, and that's the easiest way for me to see your question. So I'll have that pulled up, and then I'll be able to send those over to Stacy when we enter the Q&A portion, and I may answer some during today's presentation if it pertains to the slide that we're on. And then the next thing, you guys all commented in the webinar chat about your baked goods. That's perfect for just answering any of the conversation that's happening. And we do have some prompts today for questions in the chat, so be looking out for those as well. Then the next slide is just a little bit about us. So if this is your first webinar with Supply Pike, welcome. We create cloud-based tools that help CPGs reduce revenue loss by automatically detecting and resolving retailer compliance issues. We do that in a lot of different ways. Since we're focusing mostly on Walmart today, I'll just talk a little bit about OTIF Radar, which is one of our products that helps detect and resolve the compliance issues with OTIF, and you can actually dispute in app now. We have a new product that's coming out really soon that helps with SQEP, the Supplier Quality Excellence Fines. So be on the lookout for that. We've got lots of content coming out about how you can get access to that tool once it is live. And then lastly, we have our Deductions Navigator product, which has different levels of automation for Walmart, Target, Kroger, and Amazon. And stick around if you are interested in that product at the end of today's webinar, and we will get into it. But with that, Stacy, we've got a lot to cover, so I'm going to hand it off to you to get into today's content.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Allie. Super excited to kind of get into today's discussion with everybody. As Allie mentioned, we're going to have kind of stopping points throughout. This is going to be a little bit more interactive just because we say all the time at Supply Pike, it takes a village to be a good supplier to just about any retailer. I think there's a lot for us to learn from each other on what are the different changes that you guys are seeing kind of across your supply chains and across your business with Walmart, Target, Kroger, and Amazon. So we are going to share, of course, all of the information that we are seeing just across the box. As Allie kind of mentioned, we work with a lot of different companies right now, close to 500. And so we kind of have a really, really interesting position of, again, being able to see things that are happening across gen merch and consumables and apparel and electronics all at the same time. So we like to have these periodic updates for you guys from time to time, again, on what we're seeing across the industry. And we really wanted to kick it off by giving just a high level overview of what is going on in the retail industry. So I think this is really helpful for us as we kind of level set and kind of understand the environment that all of suppliers and retailers are in right now. Obviously, 2022 was, a crazy year. 2023 seems to be on track to be equally crazy. But, we're all continuing to see a lot of growing pains through a fragile economy. I think, we have heard the word recession, maybe potentially kind of, but maybe not, back and forth over the last probably 3 to 6 months. Obviously, inflation continues to be a really, really big deal for the economy, but we have seen, different analysts are starting to revise their expectations on whether or not we're going to be in a full-blown recession this year. I think last number I saw was that they revised the likelihood of that happening down to about 25%. So obviously numbers are really, really high in certain pockets of, consumer goods. I know if anyone has tried to buy eggs in the last 3 months can attest to it, but the job market continues to be really, really strong. Consumer spending continues to be pretty strong, especially kind of in the staple and kind of necessary goods areas. So, like many things that we've all become accustomed to in the last few years, it's all kind of in the air right now. So a few kind of headlines that we're seeing that we're really keeping an eye on here at Supply Pike. And if you guys, again, have any comments or insights, please feel free to share them in the chat. Kroger, obviously, a really, really big news is that they are looking to buy Albertsons for about $25 billion. We all know that that's kind of going through the, FTC right now to determine if there's going to be any monopoly issues. If they do end up kind of buying Albertsons and merging into one, they're going to, I believe, become the #2 largest grocery company in the United States. So that is kind of big news for a lot of us, especially for those that are supplying to Walmart in the grocery space. Another kind of interesting thing that we saw that, we're keeping an eye on is 350,000 UPS workers are potentially looking to strike this summer. So this is part of their kind of union news. If this happens, I think we can all imagine what that's going to look like as we all try to continue to hit the compliance requirements across the many retailers. So we're already starting to work with suppliers that are, number one, keeping a very close eye on this issue. And then number two, also essentially trying to get alternative carriers in place in case this does happen. The last piece of news that I saw, it looks like they are kind of moving towards resolution. So the strike may not happen, but again, it's something that we are continuing to keep a close eye on because this is going to have huge impacts, not only kind of on the, everyday, things that we order from Amazon sort of situation, but again, UPS obviously makes up a really big chunk of carriers for a lot of suppliers that, sell to Walmart, Target, Kroger, and Amazon. Other kind of news pieces that we're looking at are, again, truck driver shortage. I mean, I think this is something that we've seen all the news for a long time already. Walmart introduced a lot of new programs to kind of incentivize people to get into truck driving for them. But again, something we're going to continue to keep an eye on. And then, of course, as I kind of mentioned at the top of the call, retailers are bracing for tougher times and more frugal customers in 2023. Again, as a whole, we're starting to see inflation trend downwards. It's still obviously very high versus last year, but we're continuing to see, again, these pockets of inflation across different, categories in the different retailers that we service. So for right now, kind of remains to be seen how the rest of the year is going to go, but we're continuing again to see these growing pains as a result of 2020 and beyond, just across the entire book of business for us. So along with that, we've continued to see really, really rapid advancements in data analysis and just access to technology across supply chain. So obviously, 2020, take a shot every time you heard the word unprecedented. But with that, a lot of different companies and suppliers are really beginning to lean much more heavily into tech. As Ali mentioned earlier, I've been in this industry for a long time, aging myself a little bit. And, the supply chain industry, the CPG industry is, we're kind of slow to adopt technology, and we're slow to adopt, just tech as a whole. And so I think 2020 was a little bit of a wake-up call for everybody, to start to say, hey, like, we can't just rely on Excel sheets only. It's really important to kind of understand what is going on across the entire supply chain. So not only have we seen suppliers become more open to adopting technology, but we've seen retailers become very, very interested in kind of adopting technology as well. So obviously, being able to respond quickly and understand what's going on with the supply chain as a whole has become really, really important in the last few years. So again, leaning into this cutting edge technology to stay afloat and stay competitive. So kind of curious, as Ali mentioned, we're having a few stopping points in the chat. Are there any recent industry changes that you guys have seen kind of affect your company? Are you guys starting to see technology adoption become more prevalent in the industries that you guys are in? I don't know, Ali, if you wanted to kind of give some additional color to that question.
Yeah, I would say from the suppliers that we have a lot of conversations with, the chatter usually surrounds either the collect pickup program that really was a hot topic back in August, and that was, the daily question that we were getting several times. Or I would even say most recently, and we'll get into this a little bit today, is settlement at Walmart. Those are the two hot topics. And that's why we focused a lot on Walmart in today's presentation, because they have made a ton of changes and they are affecting suppliers greatly, especially in terms of the revenue loss that suppliers are seeing, not expecting the collect pickup program when gas prices were so high in the summer, and not expecting settlement to retire so quickly.
Yeah. No, that's super helpful context, Ali. And as Ali mentioned, curious to see if that is something that you guys are keeping an eye on as well, or if there are any other hot topics that we should be aware of, or we should be keeping track of, or even creating content for, if you guys are seeing that impact your companies. So feel free to drop that in the chat, if any. But yeah, so we really just kind of wanted to set the stage for you guys. Again, talking about at a very high level what's going on with the retail industry as a whole. But as Ali mentioned, we're really going to start honing in on the different updates that we're seeing across the retailers that we serve today. So kicking us off, of course, talking about Walmart, kind of the big elephant in the room. As we know, Walmart has really kind of upped it's really kicked it up a notch when it comes to compliance updates. Ali kind of gave a little bit of teaser there, but things like collect pickup program were announced last year. We've really started to see a strong uptick in SQEP as well. Obviously, Walmart has made announcements that they're planning to really invest in that program a lot this year. So a lot of suppliers that we work with, kind of SQEP was just kind of there. It's important. We know it's a big deal. We know it's on Walmart's radar, but because they've been making so many investments in SQEP lately, we're really starting to see fines increase significantly on that front. So, kind of the crazy thing about Walmart, because they are the #1 brick and mortar retailer, they do have the ability to kind of set the standards for what they expect for compliance. So obviously for OTIF, that's been around for a long time. You guys all probably already know expectations are 98% on time and 98% in full. For SQEP goal, their goal is 100% compliance for that. So OTIF, if you guys are kind of newer to the Walmart space, OTIF is really focused on, again, on time and in full. So that's really more on your ability to get product to Walmart when they expect it to get there and in the quantities that they expect. The SQEP program, or Supplier Quality Excellence program, is really more around kind of the actual quality of the goods that are getting to Walmart. So it's things like ASN compliance. Are you setting ASNs before you ship? Barcode compliance. Do you have the correct number of barcodes that they need? What is the case quality, pallet quality, so on and so forth. So I won't go too deep into the weeds for these two. We have a lot of really, really great content on Supplier Wiki about them. But I would really, really recommend, again, OTIF's been around for a while. So again, most of us probably know about it, know what the expectations are for that. But SQEP is kind of newer in the sense that it was just launched about 1.5 years ago. And again, they're really, really starting to up the ante when it comes to talking about the fines for the SQEP program. So if you guys aren't familiar with that, really recommend kind of getting into the weeds on what those expectations are. So other things that I think are kind of interesting, again, if you're kind of newer to the space, that it's important for you guys to know is that Walmart does have slightly more complex terminology. So for Walmart, in their terms, a chargeback does not necessarily equal a deduction. So they have the concept of an AP deduction or an accounts payable deduction, which is essentially, Walmart orders 100 cases from you, and you ship them 100 cases and you invoice them for those 100 cases. Walmart can say like, no, actually, I didn't receive those cases, whether or not it's valid, whole other conversation. But essentially, if they choose not to pay your invoice in full, so they short pay you on that, that is considered an AP deduction. A chargeback or a fine, on the other hand, is on their AR side. So that is for when you fall out of compliance for their kind of arbitrary program. So OTIF and SQEP are a great example. So if you're not hitting that 98% OTIF score, or you're not hitting that 100% SQEP requirement, they're going to issue a chargeback or a fine to you on the AR side. So one thing worth noting is why a lot of folks tend to get these a little bit confused is because if you don't pay that chargeback or that OTIF fine or SQEP fine, they will go ahead and kind of deduct that anyway from a future payment. So it looks like a deduction, but to Walmart, they treat it separately. Their expectation is that you're going to fight it separately as well. So really important to know that for Walmart, these are two different kind of worlds. With Target, Kroger, and Amazon, kind of the interesting thing is that for them, chargebacks and deductions all live in the same world. So if you are not compliant with their specific programs, or if they short pay you, whatever it is, it's all going to come out in the wash as a deduction. And how you fight them and where you go are basically going to be the same places. So for example, with Kroger, it's going to be Levante. With Target, it's going to be Synergy. You're going to fight your deductions and your compliance charges in the same place. So on one hand, does make it a little bit simpler for you to kind of know where to go. But on the other hand, again, it gets really, really hard to get into the root causes of issues, just because it all kind of looks exactly the same as it comes across. So we always kind of like to level set with the difference between Walmart and the rest of the retailers, because it's really important to understand the rules of the game so you know how to play the game. So if you guys have any questions about, definitely feel free to shoot them in the chat and we'll be happy to answer those. So one of the things that I wanted to point out, as Ali mentioned, we're going to be focusing really heavily on Walmart today, is that Walmart has the ability to stack fines for POs for its suppliers. So you can receive a deduction, a chargeback, and a post audit on the same PO, which is kind of scary. So it's not uncommon for us to see, let's just say Walmart thinks that you've shorted them on a specific product. So they'll give you a deduction because they didn't receive it in full. On top of that, you may get an OTIF fine, because, again, they didn't receive it in full. And then you could get a SQEP chargeback on something unrelated. So maybe they didn't receive your ASN, or maybe there was a barcode issue or whatever it is. I think the important thing to note too about these stacked fines is that how you go after them is also completely separate. So to Walmart, all of these teams function completely independently. So you have a deductions team, you have an OTIF team, you have a SQEP team, and you have a post audits team, which is usually kind of a third party altogether. So it is possible for you to, let's say, fight an AP deduction and get it approved, and Walmart says, you're right, our bad, we should have paid you for this, and they'll pay you back, but your OTIF fine will still stand, and your SQEP fine will still stand, and your post audit will still stand. So you essentially have to make sure that you are going after all of these deductions and chargebacks and post audits independently, and you need to make sure that you have a team in place that, again, understands the differences between these four, understands how to go after them, who to reach out to, what processes and what systems to use, because just getting one reverse doesn't necessarily mean that it will trigger kind of a waterfall effect for everything else. So again, just level setting, making sure that that's clear, because we get a lot of confusion from teams. Well, they'll go, oh, great, got this deduction approved, we're done. Actually, there's a whole bunch of other things that they need to review. So really important, again, to kind of understand the difference between these four silos. Okay, so yeah, kind of diving into the really big changes that we're seeing. Again, Allie kind of teed this up a little bit, talking about the biggest change that we've seen announced so far is really in Walmart deductions, where they have discontinued settlement disputing. So to kind of give you guys a little bit of context, there are some suppliers, usually larger suppliers, who had access to something called settlement disputing. And essentially kind of how it worked was settlement. If you were on settlement, Walmart on a quarterly basis would say, hey, you know, here is every PO that you sent over the last quarter. You know, you probably made some mistakes. We probably made some mistakes. So we're going to pick a number that we're going to, you know, kind of choose random POs to audit our settlement and say like, yes, we think that we made a mistake 70% of the time. So we're willing to write back 70% of what we dispute or of what we deducted back to you. So it was designed to expedite the dispute process for larger suppliers, those that were kind of, you know, shipping hundreds of POs a week, to help negotiate repayment for deductions of a certain time window, and then help suppliers dispute any open shortage deductions they had, again, typically on a quarterly basis. So this usually applied or only applied to AP deduction codes that were shortage related. So 21, 22, 24, 25, and 28, code 30s, which were duplicate invoices, and code 87s, which fell under the other bucket. So in case you guys are curious and wondering if, you know, hey, were we maybe under the settlement process? You probably should have received some communication from Walmart kind of stating that you were, but usually, you know, if you did not, it was probably because you were either a smaller supplier, you were a Walmart Canada supplier, direct import supplier, and usually, again, these types of claims did not fall under the settlement disputing process. So some of the benefits of settlement disputing, of course, was that it was just less work for a lot of these suppliers. So again, kind of on a quarterly basis, Walmart would say, hey, again, here are all of these POs that we think we probably shouldn't have deducted you for. We're willing to pay back X percentage of that. And we just need you to prove for these random POs that we've selected that, you know, our guess is correct. So you usually would have to provide some sort of POD or BOL for the handful of claims that Walmart would select. Usually suppliers that were on settlement disputing saw about a 70%-ish win rate for those deductions. Sometimes it would be as high as in the 80% range, but again, kind of the nature of settlement is in the name. You're settling for essentially not the full amount that you could have won back. But again, for a lot of bigger suppliers, it was just a streamlined way of working to say, hey, you know what, you know, rather than having to go individually dispute every single one of these deductions, we're willing to take 70 to 80% and we'll write off the remaining 20 to 30%, call it the cost of doing business with Walmart, and be happy and move on from there. But again, Walmart did announce that settlement disputing is going away. And to give you guys a little bit of context and color, Walmart launched APDP, which is the Accounts Payable Dispute Portal last year, replacing Direct Commerce, which was a third party that they utilize as a primary means of processing AP deduction disputes. And so they kind of are trying to position APDP as the way for suppliers to essentially do mass dispute creation. So they're trying to use APDP as the replacement for settlement. So you guys can see here, September 2021, Walmart officially rolled out APDP, replacing Direct Commerce. In October last year, they announced the end of settlement disputing, and essentially all suppliers that are on settlement today will have to move to individual disputing starting May 1st. So just wanted to throw this out there as well for those of you guys, if you're on the call today and you are a part of the settlement process, you know, Walmart has not officially announced, they're essentially rolling this out in waves. So some have already made the transition to individual disputing, some have not yet. So again, if you guys aren't aware already, just know that May 1st is kind of their official deadline. So I would really recommend, if you've not already started to do the research, begin researching kind of what it's going to take to become, to start individually disputing, because that is going to be the new world order. And, I'm sure Ali can share in the chat as well. We've done a lot of webinars already on what that shift is going to look like, and would really recommend checking those out. Or of course, we're happy to kind of meet and talk you guys through what we're seeing. We've already started the process of helping a lot of suppliers out there make that transition today. So happy to share that as a resource. So what's going to happen after settlement disputes are gone? Essentially, again, if you were on settlement before, you will now be transitioned to disputing via APDP. So that is an app that lives in Retail Link. And again, Walmart is trying to help create a settlement equivalent through what they call mass dispute creation in APDP or MDC. But we're going to talk a little bit about why that is not actually as effective as Walmart is implying that it is. So just so you guys know that the two differences between the paths. So individual disputing, essentially, and we've got a lot of content on that, so I won't go too far into the weeds, but basically you dispute one claim at a time. It's your responsibility as a supplier to provide a description of the dispute as well as proof documentation. Essentially, once you've submitted it over via APDP, there's a team called Genpact, which is a third party that Walmart contracts with. They will review your dispute, and then they will essentially say, yes, they're right, we should pay this back, or no, we deny it, or no, we need more information. And then, it'll kind of go from there. With the mass dispute creation process that Walmart has introduced, we kind of call it the throwing spaghetti at the wall and seeing what sticks method. So Walmart does allow you essentially to select up to 500 claims from a date range. You can only do it at a 10-day date range at a time, by the way, which is crazy. So you have to do it like in 10-day increments. But essentially, you can select up to 500 claims at a time, send them all in. You dispute with no proof documents and you provide no additional detail. So you're literally selecting 500 and hitting submit and seeing what works. From there, essentially, APDP will kind of auto approve or auto deny those disputes. And anything that is auto denied, essentially, you then have to follow the individual dispute process. So you kind of submit the random 500 without, again, no docs, no details, and then they'll approve what they approve, deny what they want to deny. Whatever you get denied, you have to follow the individual dispute process anyway. So this, I think, has been a really jarring number for a lot of the teams that we work with that were on settlement before. Following the MDC process, which again, Walmart is trying to equate to the settlement process, you only get a 19% auto approval rate. So whatever of those 500 that you submit, you'll usually only get a 19% approval rate, and then the remaining 81%, you then still have to follow the individual dispute path anyway. So this again has been very jarring and a bit of a wake-up call to our suppliers that were on settlement before, because they were used to getting, again, that 70%. And now it's dropped significantly to 19%, and then they're still having to follow the individual dispute process. So again, MDC is kind of a half step, I think, and it does allow you to submit a lot really, really fast. But I think one thing that we wanted to make sure that we made clear to you guys is that it's not kind of the one size fits all, and it is not a settlement equivalent. It is kind of a half step to get you partially 19% of the way there. But for, again, the remaining 81%, you're still going to have to follow the individual dispute process. So, MDC is not really going to address the root of the problem. It does allow you to submit 500 disputes at once. There is some auto approve capability. I think one of the big pros is you don't have to wait for the quarterly settlement, which, I mean, if you guys were on quarterly settlement, Walmart was usually 3 to 4 quarters behind. But obviously the cons, as we mentioned, it's an auto approval rate of only 19%, far less than normal settlement offers. You can't provide any proof documentation. So anything that gets denied, you then have to go back and individually dispute and individually attach proof documents, and then basically kind of follow the process that way. So just again, wanted to make sure you guys were aware that settlement is going away, that they did offer, Walmart has introduced MDC, but it's not really going to address, unfortunately, kind of the root of the problem. So again, don't want to get too far into the weeds for this, but for those of you guys who are on settlement before and are now looking at the individual disputing process, this is kind of what that process looks like. You have to go search for the claim in APDP and then create individual disputes for every claim line that you want to dispute. On average, it takes about 15 to 20 minutes to fight every deduction within APDP, because obviously you have to sit there, key everything in, kind of check against your own ERPs and PO information and like, hey, did we really short ship this? Did we not? And if you really didn't, now you've got to go find the proof documentation. So you've got to go down, go to your carrier portals or your 3PL portals or whatever it is, download that documentation and then attach it again one by one by one. So again, try not to get too far in the weeds with this, but we do have a lot of really great webinar content about the individual dispute process. So if you guys are coming from the settlement world and wanting to learn a little bit more about individual disputing, would really recommend you guys checking out that content. And again, of course, we're here and we're ready to help answer any questions you guys have. So kind of the TLDR, what this means for you as a supplier, if you are going from settlement to individual disputing, is just, understanding that there's going to be about an 80% reduction in shortage related paybacks through the MDC process. So you're going to need to have a team in place ready to take on and kind of catch individual disputing and understand that process and know how it works. And in addition to that, one thing that I think a lot of suppliers don't even think about is, again, the settlement process only addressed certain types of chargebacks. So now a whole new world has opened up. Do you know how to fight the 75 plus different codes that Walmart has available to you? Overages now has become an issue because overages were kind of addressed in the settlement process. That would just net out. If you were over and under, they would just kind of net out and settle. Now you have to start looking at potentially invoicing for overages as well. And basically you need to make sure that you have a team in place to really kind of cater to, essentially, you're really changing your entire process of how you handle the deduction process. So yeah, it's a big deal. And again, if you guys have any questions, we're happy to address them today, or, more than welcome to kind of talk about this offline if you guys need any additional resources. Okay, so that is on the settlement kind of resolving and going away. Again, May 1st is the deadline for that. I wanted to talk to you guys a little bit on what's going on in the world of compliance as well. So we talked about it a little bit earlier on in our webinar today, but obviously OTIF 2017, Walmart really said it's been around for a while. But again, the Supplier Quality Excellence Program, or SQEP, is really starting to kind of rear its not so pretty head for a lot of suppliers. So Walmart is going to be implementing SQEP in 4 different phases. Again, if you guys are newer to the space, or maybe you've just started getting fines, phases 1 through 3 have already rolled out. So phase 1 is around PO accuracy. So making sure like, hey, whatever you are sending over to Walmart, your ASNs and all of that good stuff are actually accurate. Phase 2 is around barcode and labeling. So Walmart has certain expectations on the number of barcodes they require, what the labels have to look like, so on and so forth. Phase 3 is around packaging. So the actual, cases that are getting sent over to Walmart, your pallet quality, your load compliance, and essentially, there are certain rules. I believe there's like 167 different rules for these 3 phases alone, and you can get fines for all of these. So again, won't get too far into the weeds just because we have a lot of great content around that. But just know that, for example, let's just use packaging as an example. So their standard fines are like $200 per PO plus like $1 for every case that is out of compliance. So again, really, really important to understand what the different rules are for SQEP. Why we want to bring them up is we've heard, again, from multiple sources in Walmart leadership that they're really investing in SQEP more and more this year. So before, they would have kind of a few what they call inspectors that would be in the different Walmart DCs, and they were responsible for kind of inspecting X number of cases. So if you weren't in that random audit that they did, you were able to escape that fine. But they are wanting to implement more and more inspectors at each of these DCs. And of course, their hope is that every case that comes through every DC will be inspected. So they're also experimenting with figuring out how they can automate the SQEP kind of review process. So there are a couple of different DCs that already have kind of like conveyor belts in place and scanners in place that will automatically detect any non-compliant issues. They're wanting to increase the number of DCs where they have this automation. So kind of a combination of the automation as well as the inspectors, we are beginning to see SQEP fines increase significantly. So I would say for the close to 500 suppliers that we work with, I think about 97% of them that did receive OTIF fines also receive SQEP fines. And in fact, we're starting to see scenarios where folks are getting more SQEP fines than OTIF fines. So if this is not something that you were paying attention to or looking at or reviewing regularly before, really recommend that you start checking this out. And you can go to, I think if you search for the app, it's called the SQEP dashboard. It looks very similar to the OTIF dashboard. But if you look for the SQEP dashboard in Retail Link, you'll be able to see kind of what your scores are, as well as what your fines potentially are or actually are. So really recommend checking that out if you guys haven't already. Okay, so moving on to what's new in compliance for Target. Just wanted to share this with you guys. So at the start of FYE 2022, Walmart has started a new compliance policy that is designed to keep supplier standards competitive with other retailers. I think one of the interesting things that we've really seen at SupplyPike over the last few years is all of these retailers are really learning from each other on the different types of compliance policies that they should implement. So for example, we'll be talking about the collect pickup program a little bit more in a little bit. But the collect pickup program that was introduced at Walmart was, I think, inspired by Amazon that did a very similar program, essentially charging their suppliers for the cost of fuel. And so we're starting to see some retailers, for better for the customers, I guess, worse for the suppliers, learn from each other. And essentially they're seeing what suppliers are willing to take. And then they're implementing them in their own kind of compliance rules. So for Target, they have started to measure and grade suppliers on what they call the PO performance for fill rate, supplier item fill rate, which are two separate calculations, which is kind of crazy. On-time ship, on-time arrival, EDI 856 or ASN availability, as well as EDI 856 ASN accuracy. So obviously a lot of this is inspired from Walmart's OTIF program, and the ASN availability and accuracy is inspired by Walmart's SQEP program. So Target does have really thick documentation on how all of this is calculated. And we'd be happy to share that with you guys if you're curious. I'm sure we'll be doing I think we actually just did a webinar on this last week. So if you guys are curious to get more into the details, you can definitely get it there, but just wanted to make sure that you guys were aware that, Target is having these new compliance rules put in place. So like others, obviously this policy is Target's way of trying to judge suppliers' performance to help protect them against out of stocks, as well as kind of the general chaos of modern supply chains. So again, really recommend checking out last week's webinar, or I believe we'll be able to share the link in the chat for how you guys can access what Target's expectations are for all of these different compliance rules. As far as Kroger goes, so Kroger has a couple of new updates as well. So unlike Walmart, as we talked about earlier, Kroger's compliance program is absorbed in its regular AP deduction process. So again, Kroger doesn't necessarily have the AP and AR charges. It all kind of washes out into one. So for Kroger, their version of OTIF is the original requested arrival date, and that is how they judge their suppliers on any late shipment compliance. For now, we have not seen or heard if Albertsons merger with Kroger is going to integrate with them, if they're going to have a new process altogether, or what that's going to look like. Obviously, this is still not not finalized. It's still pending kind of FTC updates and approval, but we are continuing to keep an eye on that, and we'll definitely let you guys know if we see any of those changes come to pass. One thing that we didn't want to call out was the compass deductions, which are designed to keep suppliers compliant with discontinued items, item changes, and product availability. These charges will appear on your invoice. So in case you guys have seen that, that is what, that this program is related to. And if you guys have any questions about kind of compass related deductions, you can email partnerportal@kroger.com, and you should hopefully be able to get some answers. We know Kroger tends to be a big pain point for a lot of suppliers. They're just not, I know Walmart is not great, but shockingly, Kroger is actually even more difficult to get a hold of. So, if you guys have any best practices or anything, please feel free to share that in the chat. But we know Kroger is typically a pain point for a lot of the suppliers that we work with. And then rounding out the compliance updates with Amazon. So in the summer of 2019, we know that Amazon moved a lot of their smaller suppliers to Seller Central instead of Vendor Central to allow them to be more competitive in the retail marketplace. So kind of the interesting thing is in Seller Central, Amazon has provided a lot of what they call growth tools. And the idea is that they are to help a lot of the small sellers continue growing. So they provide a growth opportunities program, ASIN analysis, and other similar tools like that. What we have seen is that sellers who do well on Seller Central will then be given an invitation to join Vendor Central. And again, Seller Central, just so you guys know the delineation between the two, Seller Central is really kind of marketplace. So you are not necessarily owned by Amazon. So you don't have product that's owned by Amazon. It's kind of DSV shipping. So if a customer places an order, you are responsible for fulfilling that order. Vendor Central is when Amazon will take ownership of that. So they'll actually house you in their warehouses. Usually it's for, again, sellers that are doing really well, have a lot of high velocity, a lot of high turn. Then they want to keep you in their warehouses to make sure that they can fulfill customers' orders on a more regular basis. So Vendor Central has developed to adapt to certain supplier scaling capabilities. So there are a lot of really, really great reports. Again, broken record today, trying not to get too deep into the weeds. We have other Amazon related webinars that you guys are more than welcome to check out, and they're all free as well. But just an example of some of the reports that you can access in Vendor Central. So Amazon search terms report, it's a consumer behavior report that Amazon actually curates. And it helps their suppliers stay ahead of keywords, terms, and click rates. So you can use this to be a little bit more strategic about your business, how you're positioning, how you are phrasing terms, and all that good stuff. And then there's also another great report, the alternate purchase behavior report, which is there to allow suppliers to know how competitors are doing. So if a supplier or if a customer isn't purchasing your goods and is in fact purchasing from a competitor of yours, important to understand kind of that behavior and why that may be. So again, you can continue to refine your products and your definitions and descriptions on Amazon. So just to kind of sum it all up, again, if you guys are curious to know what all the different compliance requirements are for Target, if you search for compliance policy in Partners Online, so that's their version of Retail Link. If you guys are on Walmart, you should be able to find that document that I mentioned earlier that had all the information around the compliance policy requirements. For Kroger, we have a summary located on Supplier Wiki. So when you guys get this deck, you should be able to access this link and then get all of the information there. For Kroger, ORAD and UPC/GTIN compliance is key. And then for Amazon, in Vendor Central, if you guys are Vendor Central suppliers, there's an operational performance tracker under the reports tab. And then you should be able to see basically what your compliance looks like at Amazon. So again, these are the three easiest ways for you to get access to that information if you're curious about all of the different compliance changes and compliance expectations that are going on with these retailers. Okay, so in the interest of time, I'm going to zoom through these. Again, if you guys have any questions, feel free to drop them in the Q&A or chat, or we're happy to connect after today's webinar. But for freight changes, I have mentioned it earlier. For Walmart, the big deal is their collect pickup program. So essentially, if you are a collect supplier at Walmart, Walmart has layered on a new charge for you. So just to kind of set the stage for you guys, what brought on the collect pickup program? Obviously, truck driver shortages, or it was a response to inflation, fluctuating shortages and overstocks, maintaining EDLP, and then of course, gas prices kind of in Q3 of last year were extremely high. And so Walmart wanted to introduce a way to capitalize on that. So for those of you guys who aren't aware, you should have already started to see collect pickup program charges flow through high radius. So if you're a collect supplier and you're curious about what those charges look like, you can go at high radius, check those out. But essentially, it affects any collect suppliers that are shipping through Walmart Freight or any 3PLs representing Walmart Freight. It is for collect suppliers that are shipping within Walmart US. As far as we know, we've not seen this apply to Walmart International. So nothing in Walmart Canada or Walmart Mexico, etc. Just Walmart US for now. And you will see this even if you do both prepaid and collect, but it will only affect your collect POs. So again, just zooming through this for the sake of time. Oh, looks like I don't have a slide on that. So in case you guys were curious for the collect pickup program, essentially it's kind of divided into two types of charges. So the first charge is a departmental charge. Basically what Walmart was saying was that you were just going to get a flat percentage based on whatever department you were shipping through. So it was as low as like 0.1% all the way up to like 4% of your cost of goods sold. So Walmart did say that they were anticipating that they were going to have these departmental charges fluctuate every month. We have not seen that happen. So if you actually go to Supplier Wiki and look for collect pickup program, you'll be able to see the departmental charges in case, again, you guys are curious to see how those were calculated. And if you guys have seen these fluctuate, please let us know. We've not seen it since the original published percentage. So that's been kind of crazy. Another bucket of the collect pickup program charges are based on the fuel surcharge. So essentially, if you're shipping collect, you're going to get a charge around the department, and then you're also going to get a charge based on the cost of fuel. So Walmart uses something called, I believe it's called Breakthrough Fuel, and they're a third party that Walmart utilizes to analyze your lanes as well as the cost of fuel. And that is supposed to fluctuate based on the cost of fuel. So apparently now that, gas prices are back down to, I would say pre-giant spike last year, those breakthrough fuel charges are supposed to have dropped as well. So we've not really seen a true calculation on how Walmart is looking at that, but just wanted to share those resources for you guys. I believe we also have a webinar on the collect picker program that was launched in July of last year. Well, it was announced in July and officially fines started coming out in August. So we're happy to share kind of resources around that particular program as well. So wanted to share also kind of freight changes for Target. So Target's has introduced something called Ship IQ. So they're trying to sharpen their process for collect suppliers by replacing their older shipping app called Vendor Ready to Ship with Ship IQ. The ultimate effect of this change is that suppliers, essentially Target is going to have greater visibility into suppliers' supply chain. So I think the interesting thing for right now is that we're not really seeing any, I guess, rubber meets the road changes. So there's no changes in fines or anything like that. But because Target is granting itself more visibility into supplier supply chains, it stands to reason that they might be trying to roll additional compliance requirements out in the near future because they can measure kind of each step of the process a little bit more accurately. So I would say for Target with Ship IQ, just important for you guys to know that it's been rolled out and also to sit tight and kind of be ready to anticipate any changes that they may announce in the near future. Okay, so talked a lot. Didn't know, Allie, if there were any questions or comments or anything that we can support our attendees with today.
Yeah, you kept me working in the background. I have so many links. We have a lot of resources. So if I missed one, someone needs to call me out and I will send it in the chat. But I did want to call out a question we got about SQEP and if it is expanding to the import business. So from what I saw, I did a little bit of digging just to check myself. Components of the SQEP program are still required, but they're not subject to SQEP fines or in that program. And I wanted to extend the question to you, Stacy. Do you see import business coming into the SQEP program? And if so, do you have a timeline for that?
That is a great question, Allie. And I would definitely say I would be on the lookout and be ready for SQEP for import. We don't have an exact timeline for that, but one of the reasons why, for example, OTIF isn't considered for import is because the supplier is responsible and owns the product, on the domestic side, but then of course Walmart owns everything on the direct import side. So they're not going to find themselves for the OTIF. But for SQEP, it is around things again like pallet compliance, barcode compliance, and all of this is stuff that DI suppliers should be able to account for, as well as quality of cases and things like that. So I would say absolutely be prepared. As far as we know, SQEP, if it hasn't already started hitting DI suppliers, will be coming through shortly. So definitely be prepared for that.
Yep, that's basically what I said too. And like I said in the chat, if there are updates to the SQEP program, we have our eagle eyes on that program specifically all the time, as well as deductions and OTIF at Walmart, and then the deductions programs at other retailers. So if we hear something, just refresh Supplier Wiki or email one of us, because we will let you know.
Definitely.
Yeah. We don't have any other questions because you covered everything so well, Stacy, but I will just say, I send a lot of links in the chat, and that is just the tip of the iceberg. Our content team, I work on that with lots of other amazing people. We're putting out resources all the time. Here are some of our ebooks that you can download for free that cover the deductions processes. We update those as needed for the industry. And if you have other resources that you would like, go ahead and email us. Either Stacy or I will put our emails up later. And we would love to connect you to the information that you need. One thing I wanted to call out, if you could go back to that slide, tomorrow, if you are in the area, come to the Supply Chain Hall of Fame. It's in Rogers in Northwest Arkansas, or you can join the live stream. You can find this on Supplier Wiki. We are doing a 2-hour workshop on how to build amazing DSS reports with Tim Carey. He's got about 15 years of experience or more in retail links specifically. And his workshops usually cost a couple $100. And we have secured him for 2 hours for free. And 30 minutes to an hour of that is going to be just troubleshooting, asking questions. So please come. If you're on the live stream, we'll make sure your questions get answered. And if you come in person, we're going to get your questions answered and you'll learn how to build some great reports. So with that, we can go back to our emails. Again, these are real emails. We check them every day. We want to help suppliers. That's why we post them here. But if you have other questions or you have an interest in looking at our products more closely with your team, you can book a conversation at supplypike.com. And with that, we'll get into today's bonus product preview. Stacy's going to work on pulling that up. I'm going to pretend like I'm killing time with something. Perfect. You're so fast at that.
Boom, ready. Awesome. Well, just wanted to thank you guys so much for hanging out with us today. Hopefully these are helpful. We know that all the retailers are introducing new changes all the time, and it is hard to keep up with them. And so, we're really passionate about this at Supply Pike, making sure that we are equipping you guys not only with the know-how to actually tactically handle issues, but also just making sure you guys are staying up to date update on all of the fun new initiatives that retailers are introducing all the time. So yeah, I'm going to go ahead and kind of pivot into a really, really high level overview of Deductions Navigator. If this is where you guys drop off, thank you so much for hanging out with us for close to an hour. But if not, really, really excited to show you guys kind of how we tackle deductions here at Supply Pike. So obviously I've got a demo account up, but this particular product works for suppliers that are servicing Walmart, Sam's Club, Target, Kroger, and Amazon. So yeah, so this is Deductions Navigator. This is a cloud-based tool, meaning you can log in from anywhere to access this information. And essentially, Deductions Navigator is really built on kind of two main pillars. One is around visibility, and one is around the ability to actually take action. So obviously, on the visibility side, we have the dashboard page. And on it, we show you, I like to say dashboardy things, but we can show you a total of all of the deductions that you've received, anything that is actionable. So, dollars that are still on the table that you've not gone after yet. If you've submitted any of your deductions, what is awaiting repayment, what's been paid back, and then of course, what your win rate is. We'll also show you your deductions by status. So I've got a Walmart example pulled up. So anything in Walmart research, waiting supplier action, so on and so forth. We also have a area for anything that you've settled before. So anytime you're logging into Deductions Navigator, you're always getting a clean view of all of the dollars that you can still go after. For those of you guys who are in APDP and APIS or Synergy or Levante, you know that this seems really basic, but somehow shockingly not very easy to get a hold of. So what I love about DN is that you can click in, immediately see the story of your business kind of in 30 seconds and really decide what you need to focus on for that week or that quarter or whatever it is. So in addition to the high level information that we provide, we also provide what I think is really strategic information. So for example, again, I've just got Walmart as an example pulled up, but you can see for this demo company, they have received a vast majority of their claims in codes 25, 22, and 24, which are all shortage related claims. So for this particular supplier or AP team, you can use this information and start to work with other teams in your company to say, hey guys, we're getting a lot of shortage related claims. Can you walk me through how we're shipping or how we're invoicing? Is there a particular item that we think is driving this issue? Because deductions, it's really important to go after these deductions and get that money back. But at the end of the day, deductions are really kind of a lagging indicator of things that are happening further up in the supply chain. So it's really important to understand what is going on with your company as a whole, so you can not only get paid and get the money that you should be getting, but also in the long run, get better and figure out how you can staunch the bleeding, so to speak. So other information that we show are things like deductions by amount, really powerful, especially for companies that have a dollar threshold, for example. So you may go, hey, because of how tedious this process is, we don't dispute anything under $1,000 because that just takes too much time. It's not worth it for us. But it's really important to understand, like, hey, if that were true, you'd be losing and leaving, $138,000 on the table. We'll also show you deductions over time, deductions by item number. So again, really, really powerful in that root causing, and even deductions by location. So are there particular DCs or stores that are really having issues receiving your product? How can you work with Walmart, Target, Kroger, Amazon to try it again, root cause this and prevent it from happening in the first place? So in addition to high level metrics and information, and of course you can slice and dice this however you want to, we also have, again, the second pillar of Deductions Navigator, which is around taking action. So whenever you onboard with us, we'll go back as far as we can. So for Walmart, as an example, we'll go back up to 2 years, in backlog, for others up to a year, so on and so forth. And within each deduction, we will automatically pull all of the relevant information for you. So if you guys, again, are used to doing this kind of manually on your own, you know what that process looks like. You get a deduction and now you have to start the research process. Did we short ship it? Was it prepaid? Was it collect? Who was the carrier? Did we send an ASN? Did they receive it? Now I got to go pull a DSS report, so on and so forth. Beauty of software is we'll automatically pull and aggregate all this information for you. So within a specific claim, you'll get all of the claim details, all the claim lines within that particular deduction, all the order information, check details, who the carrier was, what the shipping method was, vendor number, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I think one of the most powerful parts of Deductions Navigator is that we also can automatically pull proof documentation for you. So we have integrations with close to 100 different 3PLs and carriers. And so we will utilize our technology to say, hey, look for any documentation that has 201200035 on it and automatically attach it for the supplier. So when you guys hop into a specific deduction, all of the information is already waiting for you. And then another really cool thing is, because we know, for example, it is a code 25, which is a shortage related code. We know your collect. We know that you're going to need a BOL for that. So we have a lot of business logic already baked into the application. And so all you have to do is kind of click into a specific deduction, do a really quick cursory look through, make sure the document is there. And if it is, we'll call that out to you that it's ready to dispute. And essentially you just click one button, submit dispute, and we'll ship it off to APDP for you and track it all the way through. So really, really cool. It takes what is usually, again, that 15 to 20-minute process down to literally one click. And just to show you guys some really cool bells and whistles, we also have the ability to bulk dispute. So again, I've just got a demo account up, but you can do up to 100 at a time. And in fact, with pretty much all of our retailers, we also have the ability to auto dispute. So you can set the threshold and you can basically say, hey, for codes 22, 24, 25, under $500, if it's got the documentation submitted, I don't even want to look at it. So you can set all of the different thresholds for the different codes that we support. And essentially, we have taken teams down from spending dozens and dozens of hours a week on this, down to literally, hey, I just go in every 2 to 3 hours every week to make sure everything is being done the way I want it to be done. And then from there, I can go focus on other high priority things. So that's all I've got for today. Hopefully this is helpful for everybody. And again, if you guys have any questions, we're happy to answer for y'all.
Yep, I just put our emails back in the chat if you didn't get them when we were on the slide earlier. And thank you all for staying on a little extra, and we appreciate you. We'll see you at the next webinar. Thanks, Stacy.
Thanks, guys. Bye, everybody.